Zion Williamson and Jordan Poole's offense, not Herb Jones being healthy, is the true key to unlocking the Pelicans' defensive potential. I'll tell you why in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with y'all on this Monday, and we are going to look at the defense. Let's look at what could translate to on-court potential for New Orleans, how they can get back to being a top defensive unit next season. And I'm going to tell you this, while Herb Jones being healthy wouldn't hurt things, that's not the main reason. It's Zion Williamson and Jordan Poole's offense, and I'll explain why that offense is actually the key to the defense in today's episode. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet with FanDuel using their app, and you can get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app if your first $5 bet wins. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And don't forget, you can also watch us every single weekday at 10:30 a.m. on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network, channel 7.1 in New Orleans, same place you watch your Pelicans play. Get used to going to that channel because the season's about to be here. We are almost a week away from Media Day, and I can't wait for that. We'll, of course, have a ton of coverage from that here on the Locked On Pelicans podcast. But I want to get into the defense. This fell off a cliff for New Orleans last year. This is a defense that had been very, very good for the most part under head coach Willie Green till last year's disastrous season, where they finished with the 30th ranked defense in the NBA. They were 6th the year before that, and 6th the year before that as well. So overall, under head coach Willie Green, they've been a pretty good defense. And last year, everything just completely fell apart. Look, last year was a disastrous season for a variety of reasons. We don't need to break down why. The team was just bad. They were injured. It's as simple as that. But here's the thing. If they want to get back into being a top defense, it is not just health. It's going to take more than just Herb Jones being Herb Jones, though we'll talk about him in the third segment of today's show. I'm going to give you two stats really, that I think are really important when it comes to looking at the Pelicans and their defense, and this is maybe the most important thing to getting their defense back on track. And it has to do with the offense. So here's the number right now, 62.7%. I'll pause for dramatic effect as you try and figure out what that number is. 62.7%. I'm going to tell you it ranked 27 out of 30 teams here, and that's not in a good way. That is their field goal percentage, their accuracy at the rim this past season. I'm going to give you a second stat that goes along with it. That's just the accuracy, right? 62.7%. That was 4th worst in the league. By comparison, Phoenix was 71.5% at the rim. Boston, which is a better one to look at for purposes of what you'll see, it was 70.7% at the rim shooting. Let's go to frequency, right? Did you take a lot of shots at the rim? New Orleans did, 7th most. Over a third of their shots came at the rim this past season. That's great. You want to take a lot of shots at the rim. It's one of the most efficient places to shoot in the NBA. They shot 33.8% of their shot attempts were at the rim. That was 7th most. So here's the thing, right? They're getting to the rim a lot, and they're not shooting particularly well there. That means a lot of missed shots overall, right? That's what that's telling you here. The worst thing you can do for your defense is miss a shot at the rim. I mean, there's other bad things too, don't get me wrong. But that's a particularly egregious spot. And the reason for that is if you basically blow a layup, right? That's what that is. You blow a layup or you miss a little bunny at the rim when you're trying to do something or whatever it might be. If you miss a shot at the rim, you're gifting a transition opportunity to your opponent. Almost immediately, you are gifting your opponent a fast break opportunity. that's actually what it does to you. Think about it. If Zion's driving to the basket and goes up with a layup, maybe it's a foul, they didn't call it, whatever, misses it, and then just falls under the basket or falls behind the baseline, right? Like where the photographers are around the stanchion for the basket, he's out of the play. If the opponent secures the defensive rebound, they have a 5-on-4 man advantage immediately at that point in time. So that kills you if that's the case, right? One of the things that speaks to this is the Pelicans were giving up so many transition opportunities to their opponents last year. They were 28th out of 30. They were third worst in terms of frequency for opponents because they were missing shots at the rim. So this was pretty simple, right? If Zion Williamson and Jordan Poole can play downhill, can attack the basket, and make those shots, you don't gift transition opportunities to your opponent. Transition is one of the spots where you can give up just very easy points. It fixes the defense all of a sudden. Like, you know, the everydayers and longtime listeners have heard me say this a lot. I think of it almost in terms of soccer a little bit, not quite, but your offense and defense are very much connected. One flows into the other with these type of opportunities with things. So when you see that, and this is something that Joe Mazzulla talks a lot about with the Boston Celtics, you make your shots at the rim, it makes the opponent inbound the basketball, and it allows your defense to get back and get set. And then all of a sudden, you're looking at an entirely different scenario here if that's the case. So that's how this team can get so much better next year defensively by limiting those, and think about it this way. If you miss a shot on offense and you gift a transition opportunity that's, let's call it a guaranteed 2 points for the opponent, right? You missed out on 2 points. You gave them 2 points. That's a 4-point swing all of a sudden. Not just 2 points. It's a 4-point swing. This killed the Pelicans defense last year. And a big part of it is, look, Zion didn't play, right? Zion didn't play. So if that's going to be the case, they're going to have a whole lot trouble trying to score at the rim. Just as simple as that. They're not going to score at the rim as much if Zion Williamson isn't playing, right? Was there anyone else that played downhill? Not really. But this year, you have Zion, who in theory is going to be healthy, doing that. Jordan Poole is really good at playing downhill and attacking, but you also added Jeremiah Fears whenever he's into the rotation and getting significant minutes. That's all they wanted him to do in Summer League. They just said, play downhill, attack, attack, attack. This is going to improve the team. If you look at the top 5 offenses in the league, or defenses in the league last year, OKC, Orlando, Clippers, Houston, Boston, Minnesota, all of those were in the top 15 of accuracy at the rim. When you look at the bottom 5, Charlotte, Toronto, Brooklyn, New Orleans, Chicago, they were all in the bottom third of rim percentage. They were all, if you look at the bottom 5 in terms of rim percentage accuracy, Charlotte, Toronto, Brooklyn, New Orleans, Chicago, they were all in the bottom half in terms of defensive efficiency. It ties to more than just this, right? If you just make your shots, the opponent has to inbound the ball. That allows your defense to get back and get set. We're looking at it from an efficiency standpoint. The easiest place to score is at the rim. But this also ties into another advantage New Orleans can have, an advantage OKC has, getting to the free throw line. There is a correlation somewhat, right, between, maybe I'm not a statistician, maybe I'm using this kind of wrong, but you look at teams that get to the free throw line a lot and make their free throws, those tend to be teams that have good defenses too. Make your shots, ideally efficient, generate efficient looks. Mid-range is not that efficient, so you want to be a little bit careful with that. Same thing with threes, right? It gets efficiency because it's worth an extra point, but the percentages aren't particularly great. So if you're bricking tons of threes, you're all of a sudden now kind of playing in transition more than you would like. Simply making your shots would help. That's why you don't want to do a ton of mid-rangers, because when you look at accuracy of mid-rangers, the year the Pelicans finished last year, 2 years ago when they won 49 games, they were 5th in terms of field goal percentage for long mid-range at 45.2%. They were missing more than they were making there, right? Even though they were good at it. It says, if you do this in efficient areas on the court, your defense will then rise up simply because of that alone. Zion Williamson, Jordan Poole, lesser extent Jeremiah Fears, and a couple others that we'll talk about in the third segment here about where they can grow. That's the type of thing that's going to help fix this defense more than just Herb Jones being Herb Jones. We'll talk about Herb Jones too in the next segment because, that's a guy that can definitely get into that. But I want to look at opponent 3-point percentage too, because that's been something that I've been watching for the past couple of years with New Orleans that is very, very interesting. Let's look at that and what it means for this team that's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers, if you're new, can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because, look, however you want to bet, they got it for you. The player props, look, if you took the over for rushing yards for Jake Retzlaff in Tulane, you're feeling real good right now. If you took the 49ers -3, maybe you just like the spreads, right? You would have won your bet right there. Tulane -1.5. You would have won your bets right there. Or maybe you realize how the game's unfolding and you want to stay in on the action and make these games a little bit more interesting. Live in-game betting. You've also got the same game parlay. Get a bigger payout that way too. It just makes every game more exciting. It's also quick, easy, and the best way to add a little bit more juice to whatever game that you are watching. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That is FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. And if it wins, you're going to get $300 in bonus bets. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. If you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Also, shout out to all the everydayers. There are tons of y'all. The Tulane game on Saturday. That was a lot of fun. I enjoyed talking with every single one of y'all that I met there. And I appreciate everyone, whether you're excited or not excited about the Pelicans this coming season. Just still seeing the passion was pretty cool. So I want to get into something that could make or break the Pelicans defense next season, but I tend to feel pretty good about this. There's something in the NBA, we call it Jedi defense. Right? Like Star Wars, like the Jedi mind trick, like you're going to miss this 3-point shot, even though you're not actually doing anything to kind of dissuade them from missing that 3-point shot. We talk a lot about, or I do at least, trying to look for the right kind of balance between volume and field goal percentage, right? Maybe you're an elite 3-point shooting team, but you don't take that many per game. You get what I'm saying? There's a balance in trying to kind of find whatever works for the team here. For the Pelicans, one thing that they have been very good at we're throwing out last year, the 2 years before that, they've done a very, very good job of having opponents miss threes. In 2022-2023, opponents shot 37.2% from all threes against the Pelicans. That is a very, very good number. That was 10th best in the league. 2 years ago, when they won 49 games, the opponent, I'm looking at the wrong numbers here. That would have been terrible. Hold on. Accuracy. Here we go. It gets better. 3 years ago, 2022-2023, opponents across all three shot 34.3% against the Pelicans. That was the best in the league. The year they won 49 games, opponents shot 35.5% against the Pelicans. That was second best from three. That's really good. Limiting one of the most efficient shots is a really good way to make your defense better. But when you look at the volume of it, the Pelicans gave up a lot of those shots. In 2022-2023, when they had the first best of opponents basically missing threes, 37.8% of opponents' shot attempts came from three. That was 25th, so sixth worst in the league. 2 years ago, when they won 49 games, opponents shot, of their shot profile, 41.1% were 3-point attempts. That was second worst in the league. Yet those opponents were missing threes, right? Like that's a good combination. If teams are taking a lot of shots against you and just missing those shots, kind of similar to what we talked about with the rim with the Pelicans in the first segment, taking a lot of shots there, but missing those shots. That's a great combination for empty possessions for your opponents. But here's the thing with that. Why are those opponents missing those shots? And is that a sustainable thing? I will tell you, if you're looking at just from a data, a numbers perspective, a lot of noise is in there. It's tough to actually make out, what's real, what isn't. And sometimes those can be swung, those percentages, based off of just like one game. So it can be kind of difficult, I think, at times to trust that data. But here's the thing. When you have back-to-back years of that, there's something to it, right? So I think a lot of people look at those 2 years where the Pelicans had the 6th, 7th best defense, depending on where you look each year. And are like, oh, that was a fluke, right? Like I've seen a lot of stuff written, national media and others, about being like, that's a fluke. I don't trust that. And to an extent, look, I get it. That makes some sense here when it comes to it, that it just something seems a little bit off like that. And there's some stats that I don't love in some of this stuff, that where you can kind of like factor in like luck when it comes to opponent shooting, that basically if teams shot average against a team from a certain spot, what would that have equated to? And so it can kind of factor in like, hey, something's a little fluky here and maybe you shouldn't trust this, right? The end of the day, do you just want to give up 3-point shots? And the answer is probably no. But if it's working, it works. And so for 2 straight years, it really worked for this team. I don't have the best way to quantify it for y'all exactly why it worked, but this is one of those things that I kind of just trust with this team. For whatever reason, what they're doing works, and you should go back to doing that. This is actually something that is to Willie Green's credit, that the defense has been that good when you look at this roster over the past couple of years, and you don't see a lot of like top-notch defenders here. But he has regularly put out a very good defense for this team, right? Whatever you think about Willie Green, the defense has been good, and that's a testament to him, right? When you look at, the team 2 years ago when they won 49 games, right? Let's just look at minutes played. Herb Jones played the most minutes. Zion Williamson played the second most minutes. It's not like, especially that year, he wasn't like a good defender. He was a good defender last year, not 2 years ago. Third was CJ McCollum. Fourth was Brandon Ingram. Fifth was Jonas Valanciunas. Of those top 5 guys, one of them is a good defender. Everyone else is average at best. Zion, CJ, Ingram, Valanciunas was average at best. Then it was Trey Murphy at 6. That year is kind of average at best. 7 was Dyson Daniels, who was an above average defender. 8 was Najee Marshall, who's an above average defender. But Dyson Daniels wasn't what he was in Atlanta when he was here in New Orleans. So they managed to turn those guys into a top 6, 7 defensive unit. That's an impressive thing. Truthfully, it is. So when you see that, I feel good that they can kind of get back to this, right? Whether that's just letting bad 3-point shooters have space so that they take open 3-point shots when they're not particularly good. So you're at least kind of making bad guys take those bad guys taking good shots. It's a strategy that works, right? They've also done a very good job of daring teams to shoot and taking away the rim. And that's something that has kind of been in their favor. We talked about the rim percentage and all of that. Frequency, when you look at frequency over the past couple of years here in terms of at the rim, New Orleans has done a very good job of limiting teams getting to the rim. They don't have a rim protector, but if you don't let teams get to the rim in the first place, well, that's going to do the job, right? There's ways to limit the damage that you could have done to you there. They were 10th a year ago in terms of frequency. 2 years ago, not last year. 2 years ago, they were 10th. What was it the year before that? Let me pull the numbers here and we can see it's going a little bit slowly. But it was also a pretty good way of doing that. They were 9th. The limit teams at the rim, you don't need to worry about it, right? And here's the thing. When you look at efficiency, basically making the most of every single possession, here's the order, the chart of efficiency, right? A lot of people think 3-pointers because it's kind of a 3-point driven league. But it's 1, free throws. Most efficient shot in the NBA. Number 2 is at the rim. Number 3 is the corner 3. And then you get to above the break threes and all of that. It's corner threes are kind of the key. So if you can limit those, you can do a good job. So that is something that New Orleans has looked. Don't let them shoot corner threes, make them take above the break threes, which aren't as efficient as the corner 3 is. The corner 3 is shorter, so thus it seems like it's easier to make, right? That's kind of the prevailing thought behind all of that. The other opportunity is limit transition. That's kind of separate. Transition opportunities are scoring at the rim usually. So it kind of factors into that a little bit. But overall transition, when you look at play context, also kind of factors in. So limit all that. Make your shots, and it just gets better, and kind of figure out what you want to give your opponent. You're going to need to give something to your opponent. And Willie Green has figured out what to give the opponents to kind of force misses or have misses out there, however you want to describe it. That's good, right? There's some Jedi defense too, because you can't really why are they missing? But you've got to add that kind of extra layer of context of who's shooting those threes. So what type of threes are they? Are they in rhythm or not? If you can disrupt all of that, and the Pelicans have done a very, very good job of that, you can end up with a pretty good situation like they've had. With Zion being healthy, Jordan Poole there, and then kind of just getting back to what they do defensively, there's a very good chance that the defense can be in the top 10 again next year, because that is something that head coach Willie Green has done a lot of. I'm excited to see them kind of fly around on defense and just be better than they have in years past. So coming up next, look, Herb Jones is going to help. Chemistry is also going to help. Even Messi can help, but also not in the way you think. Let's look at that. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by 5-Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5-Hour Energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. I love how portable they are. There's big taste in a tiny shot. You can basically take it anywhere and get that boost when you need it. I was on a lot of planes last week. Kind of exhausted from all the travel. Coming up again this week here. Throw one of those in my bag in the middle of a plane flight when you're kind of lagging. I don't sleep on planes well. Take one of those. You're going to feel great and be able to get off the plane and kind of do your thing. I love the grape, just classic grape flavor from the 5-Hour Energy. The Transfusion's also one of my favorite ones, but that's kind of got a grape flavor too. Drink one every time before I go golfing as well. So enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new. You can get them in-store and online at 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. Become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. All right. We've looked at the defense here. For your second listen, by the way, what went wrong in the Saints' loss to the 49ers? Can they catch the ball? Some bad penalties too. Ross Jackson's making sense of everything black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I got to wrap this up quickly because I'm kind of pushing time here on the show. Couple things that are also going to help the defense. Look, Herb Jones being healthy is going to help. It's going to massively help. I don't want to discredit Herb. He could easily win Defensive Player of the Year. The dude is that good. 20 games last year. People have kind of forgotten about him. I love Herb Jones. I know you love Herb Jones too. Him being healthy is going to help, right? I don't need to spend much time on that. The way he can disrupt and shut down an opponent's best player, block 3-pointers, which you rarely see. That type of stuff is just so incredible. Love Herb Jones. Him being healthy will go a long way towards helping this team, right? Same for DeJounte Murray whenever he comes back. Last year, I'm going to give him a pass on everything because of what he went through personally and then the injury too, right? There was just... no one should have to go through that much. And you kind of feel for him and all of that. And then trying to be a professional basketball player is just difficult when it comes to all of that. What's also going to help is health, but not because you just have good players on the court, but there's chemistry. Everyone's on the same page, right? You're not kind of doing a next man up mentality where it's does this guy know the defense and what to do? Hopefully they do. But there's also knowing your teammates' tendencies. I'll use an offensive analogy for this. Chris Paul, one of the reasons he was so great was not that he was just awesome. He was, but it was things like when he passed a player the ball, he knew where on their body they wanted to catch it. Some guys like it a little bit lower. Some want it up top. Some want it kind of right in the middle, to get up and get their shot off, right? He also knew where on the court they wanted to get the ball. So he'd make sure to put the ball in their favorite spot and encourage those guys kind of to go there. Kind of thing. When you know all of that about your teammates, it's just going to make everything go a little bit better. And Same thing defensively. If you know where their weaknesses are they bad on their left side, bad on their right side, you can cover for that in a way that maybe some guy who might know the defense, but is one of your end of bench guys doesn't, and your defense can kind of get hurt from that a little bit. Defense is often played, they say, on a string, right? If someone's a little bit lost there, that whole string breaks and the whole thing falls apart. So getting just health so everyone can have that chemistry, stay on the same page, is also going to be a factor. Growth is also going to be a factor. If Jeremiah Fears breaks into the rotation and starts getting tons of minutes and is playing downhill and is scoring at the rim or drawing fouls, goes to what we said in the first segment. That's going to help fix the defense a lot through his offense. That's an important thing to keep in mind. Yves Missi growing can help a lot too. If he starts being more of a lob threat, a finisher, he can flush down dunks. That's going to improve your defense. Again, made shots help your defense because the opponent then has to inbound the ball. He's certainly capable of doing that and growing in that way. If he can also grow into a little bit more of a rim protector, I think that would help too. But the Pelicans run a switching scheme. And by switching, it kind of gets to denying teams driving into the paint. It goes to those numbers that I had just spoken about a little while ago in the last segment, that if you're not allowing shots at the rim, okay, well then teams can't really score at the rim, right? Or at least that volume's going to be down. Thus, it helps your defense. So Missi growing is going to really be a big part of that too. And if he can be a little bit better on the perimeter, if he can provide some rim protection, that's the type of player that can really up the Pelicans defense actually on the defensive side of the ball. So there's reasons to be optimistic about the Pelicans defense next year, even if you look at the roster and like none of these guys are individually like tremendous other than Herb on the defensive side. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments down below. That's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Be back with y'all tomorrow.